get started by just kind of settling ourselves in our seat. Kind of get yourself situated and try to find the position that's most beneficial for your spine to be straight and upright. We're trying to become more awake, which is very hard at the end of the day, but you know, that's the way it is. So, now we're trying to bring our senses inward to start, and so it's helpful if you invite your mind to join you, to join your body here. And then perhaps find the sensation of your breath as it's going in and out of the body, the tip of your nose, or perhaps as your belly rises and falls. And just keep your mind anchored there for a few moments. Familiar with 9-round breathing, you can choose to do that as a way of settling the mind from all its distractions. And try to remember the reason you chose to come here this evening. And now, based on that reason, generate a firm intention to use your time well. And then combine this intention with the wish that it not only benefit your own mind, but that it ripples out to benefit others. And just think about the reasons why we need a spiritual teacher. What comes up for you? And just think about all the examples of how we've relied on teachers to learn almost everything that we know in this life, from the time we are born. now as you're investigating a spiritual path, think about why it might be exactly the same thing in terms of needing a teacher as it was to learn to read or write or walk. If we didn't need a spiritual teacher, we'd probably all already be enlightened. The teachings are correct and we've had since beginningless time. So we've had plenty of time. Yet we're still stuck in cyclic existence. If the teachings are correct, perhaps having a spiritual teacher can help us make progress. Our neighbors are celebrating their teacher. Think how fortunate we are that we have access to so many teachings in so many books from around the world. Through bookstores, through YouTube. At Dharma centers. And if we do proper investigation, we can use these resources to find qualified teachings taught by qualified teachers who are disciplined, who are subdued, who are pacified, who have more qualities than the students. Who appear to understand the nature of reality, who have enthusiasm for the teachings, have enthusiasm for teaching us. Have a wealth in the knowledge of the teachings, are skilled in teaching, and truly have loving concern, patience for the students. are able to repeat the teachings again and again without ever being discouraged by the student's performance. If you are seeking a teacher, take a moment to try to generate in your heart a strong and sincere aspiration to find a qualified teacher, a spiritual friend to guide you along the way. And we can dedicate our merits of reflecting in this way. That all sentient beings, ourselves and others, can find perfectly qualified spiritual guides in this and all our future lives. And may we never be separated from spiritual guides. And may all these teachers have long and healthy lives. And may all their projects for sentient beings succeed without any obstacles. Take a moment to check in with your body again. Just breathe into any spots of tension. And when you're ready, open your eyes. So Emily bragged about you guys. She said you all did good. She didn't explain what that meant, so
She's
I
pretty
can't
good.
be specific, but anyway.
She's pretty good herself.
Yeah, she is. So, my name's Tendrin, for anybody who's new. I was gone last week. So any questions from last week?
Yeah, I have one question. I was wondering why, when it came down to at least the 3 qualities the teacher should have, why wasn't one of those more knowledge? Because I would just assume that would be naturally something a teacher would have.
Maybe they also assume that. But so what are the 3 qualities? Look at it rationally. What are the 3 qualities?
A subdued mind, compassion, I forget the other one.
Yeah, you're like me. If they're 3, then we can only remember 2. So, all right. Anybody else remember what they are?
Pacified and highly pacified.
What do those mean? We're gonna go through them again. Shall I go through them again?
Sure.
One is that they developed a high level of concentration,
Yeah.
and the other wisdom through the realization of emptiness.
So I would say that's included.
Okay,
Having more, you know,
okay.
more knowledge than you is kind of included in those
Okay.
two things,
Mhm.
particularly wisdom.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, anybody else? All right. I think I can make this work. Hmm. Any thoughts on if you run into difficulties with the teacher? Did she get to that?
A little bit,
A little bit. Okay.
we ran out of time.
Yeah, I really didn't want to go through the qualities, but that's what she wanted to do, so that's what she did. That's all right. That's what I get for trying to pass the buck of the tough subject. All right. Oh, I heard from Sharon today. She's getting ready to go to a weekend teaching or 3-day teaching with His Eminence, the Gendon Tripa, who's at Vajrapani. And something else, so she's excited. So, moving to France is helpful, apparently.
So I had are you going to go over the perfect disciple as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe.
Shall I ask my question now then, or?
Okay. So this is where I left off. And so sometimes, you know, we just have to, I'll be a jumble, you're two different people. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how this relationship between a student and teacher evolves, you know, what has to happen. So it's a karmic connection. The reason why people feel like sometimes they meet a teacher and they've known them, you know, that they feel like this must have been their teacher in past lives, because there's an immediate connection. And that's just, according to the teachings, that's due to lots of effort made in past lives. But it's a two-way street. It's not just one way. So it's not just that you decide that the teacher has qualities, but you need to do something too. So you investigate into the teacher and you decide that they have more qualities than you do, they're more subdued, they're more, you know, they have more wisdom, they have more concentration, they have more scriptural knowledge, they're enthusiastic, they, you know, they don't get discouraged by lack of progress in the students, all those things. So, but also from our side, you know, in order to cultivate this connection, we also have to develop trust in the teacher, which is something that comes from our side. You know, it's not, they can display their qualities, but we have to choose to trust. We have to be open, which means we need to be able to share things with our teacher, because they can't guide us if they don't know what's going on with you. You know? So, and then respect for the teacher, which can be in all sorts of ways, and we're going to talk about that, how to rely on the teacher in thought and how to rely on the teacher in action. And then awe of the teacher. Small ask, isn't it? Some things just make me laugh. Okay. So the reason that we need trust is that if we do trust them, then their energy by itself can help subdue us. You know, it's like just being in their presence, we can usually settle down a little bit. And that's part of what we talk about when we say that we go to retreat with Lama Zopa Rinpoche or something. We're in his mandala and we just all do a little, we have more energy just by virtue of being there, you know, partly because he never shows a lack of energy and you just kind of feel uplifted by his qualities and you just don't want to waste a moment. But again, because, you know, he clearly is not wasting a moment. Of course, we don't always succeed with these aspirations, but if we don't stay open, and that means both with, you know, conversations or information, but also just when we're hearing teachings, when we're listening to teachings, if we don't stay with that mind of, you know, not having decided yet, if we don't stay open, and so whenever we hear anything, we just assume, you know, we can learn something from it, as opposed to closing the door and saying, nah, not going there, you know, just, or I don't agree with that, or whatever, that we stay open to listening through the teachings instead of very quickly just kind of going, yeah, maybe, or whatever, but shutting down. If we shut down, we can't hear the teachings. So we need to keep, and this is, you know, so many of the Buddha's teachings are outrageous to our culture. You know, just past and future lives is outrageous to our culture. So you really have to kind of stay open. Well, maybe it's true, maybe it's possible, maybe whatever. And then those subjects that you hit that really, like, you just feel like you can't go there, you kind of make the choice to just put it on a shelf and you'll check later, after you've developed more confidence in the teachings, if you develop more confidence in the teachings. And then you can look at it later. But if we decide it can't be true, we've shut the door, and it makes it really difficult to ever open it again. You know, because we've already decided. And so that any motivation to try to open that door again is not going to be there. So that's a real disadvantage to ourselves to do those, you know, so we want to practice that kind of mind. So when we have that temptation to just go, oh yeah, really? To kind of go, okay, I'm setting that on the shelf. And, you know, the first year I practiced, you know, it was like my shelf had way more stuff on it than my heart had in it. I was like, no, don't know about that noon, about that noon. I mean, it's true, that's how you start. So that's all right. So this is a process. It's not an event, unless, like I said, you have such a strong karmic connection with a teacher from previous lives that, you know, as they say, the hair on the back of your neck stands up when you're in their presence, you know, that you just, you know, you're alive with that connection. So I've never had that experience, so don't take it from me. I'm way too, you know, one of my obstacles is that I don't like authority. I don't like to do what people tell me to do. I wouldn't recognize a teacher if they had on a name tag that said, I'm your teacher, trust me. Not gonna happen. So,
Sounds like a trick.
yeah, it sounds like. So anyway, okay. But the more we can open ourselves to perhaps this process, you know, if you meet a teacher, like when I met a teacher, you know, when I was in Australia and I was taking these studies, and I'm, you know, over time, you know, after like 3 years down the road, you know, I'm sitting there and he's discussing the qualities of the teacher, of the spiritual teacher, and I'm sitting there going, yeah, tick, tick. I'm going down the list going, you know, he has all these qualities, you know, and it was just like, but it was only because I was willing to tick the boxes. I mean, the evidence was already there, but it was like I hadn't really wanted to tick the boxes, you know. But then you just, you know, and then there's that feeling of such gratitude that someone has taken their time to keep going over the teachings to such meager students without any sense of frustration or, well, there was, you know, sometimes they show the aspect of being really frustrated or impatient with you to kind of get you to, like, I can't answer your questions if you don't read the text, you know, kind of attitude. But, you know, it's just really, you know, they've been training, you know, with people who have a lot of knowledge, and then they come over to the West, you know, and they're dealing with people who study maybe when they show up to class, but usually not in between, you know. They're just, and so they're really having to pull out from their experience and knowledge little slivers of ways to try to get people interested that fit with their lives, that are so different from their lives, you know. It's you know, it's incredible the willingness of them to, because we asked, they're willing to keep, digging deep to find a way that make the teachings relevant to you and your circumstances. And they left their whole world behind. They left all their friends, all their teachers, they left their language behind. Geshe Tashi Sering, the first year he was in Australia, said he could speak to the cows, and basically the only other living beings that he could communicate with, because there was no translator, he spoke no English. They didn't even serve him food he liked. He lost lots of weight, but yet he didn't leave. And trust me, it's not because they're well paid. It's not. So it's interesting. Anyway, but that's not enough. It's not enough whether they made these huge sacrifices. But it's just something to keep in the back of your mind that, that especially for the ordained, you're really leaving conducive conditions for your practice and your own development of your mind in order to enter much more difficult conditions in order to work with your mind for the benefit of others, and they're happy to do. And they, but it's just that it's just something to appreciate. So. They don't usually yawn. So, an individual who you wish to regard or choose to regard as your spiritual mentor should, in the very real and immediate way, embody the teachings. That person should be able to teach you out of their realizations, their own experiential realizations, because they are a living example of the teachings. Now, this is a perfect teacher that's being described here. Ideally, or if you have the merit, you can find a teacher who's teaching from their experience. They're not just teaching from the text. They're not just teaching from their understanding of the words of the teachings. That they have also reflected on the teachings. They've also transformed their minds. They've also, so they're coming from an experiential place as well as a scriptural place. You need both. They need to have knowledge, and they also need to have implemented that knowledge so that they have experience of it. But they're not going to necessarily have experience of everything, and that's where you come back to these three, that you want them to have more qualities than you have. And because, let's face it, especially at the time of, the Buddha, and for many centuries after that, there wasn't accessibility. So the teacher you might meet, the only quality they may have is that they know more than you about the teachings, And then it may just be that they just are kinder than you are, more patient than you are, and they don't actually have more knowledge of the teachings, but they can guide you in being, a more compassionate, loving human being.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
I thought all this time that I knew what realization meant, that
Oh,
it
yes.
was like a deep insight into an aspect of the teachings. But I have heard teachers say all of a sudden, oh, I haven't had any realization.
Mhm.
So what does it mean exactly? Does it mean a direct perception of emptiness?
Yes.
Okay.
Usually it means a direct perception of emptiness. It can be a direct perception of impermanence. It can be, in
Okay.
other words, you're going beyond thinking about it, and then you have an experience that is direct, just like our eyesight seeing color,
Okay. So it's not just some deep feeling about some, like bodhicitta or something
No,
like that?
it's
Okay.
when you've transformed your mind into bodhicitta,
Okay.
okay? So, so the
It's
very least.
specific meaning then.
Yeah, it's
okay.
very specific, so it's, now it can be used more loosely than that,
Yeah.
but it's really intended to mean that a realization is one where you've gone beyond just thinking about it. And now, you get it, and it's unshakable, because you've had an experience of it. So now, there's just not going to be any doubt, because it's not words, it's not just reasoning, it's an actual experience. So generally, that's what realization means in this context. You can also have a deep understanding, like an inferential cognizer is what they call that, technically speaking. You know, so you have a valid state of mind through inference, through reasoning. You have an unshakable point of view of, say, of reality or of impermanence, you know, but it's not that direct experience. And that's the kind of mind we need to develop in order to have because when that mind gets strengthened, it will be the mind that has the power for you to have a direct experience. You know, if you haven't developed the reason, it's not luck, it's effort, it's reasoning. You know, so and then you have to remove your obstacles. You know, so, and your obstacles can be things like not liking authority, and not wanting to be told what to do. Those things, you know, block us. Our faults block us from our ability to understand. Does that make sense? So slowly, over time, you should be able to develop more and more trust and openness with your teacher. And that's from your own, you know, if you implement their teachings, you know, instructions, this is going to be based on experience. You're going to see that what they're advising you works if you do it. Most students go, yeah, you know, I find if I do what my teacher told me to do, things improve. But we resist that, you know, we tend to, you know, want to go back to old habits and just, you know, chase after meaningless, you know, experiences because they're easier. So you may not understand what your teacher is telling you, but because you've developed faith in their abilities and their qualities, then it kind of helps you keep looking at that, you know, until you can understand it. It keeps you aspiring to understand it. I mean, I have to admit, one of the best qualities for me and teachers, you know, I'm coming from the West, and I'm, you know, not easily tamed, shall we say. And some of the ideas and the rituals are just outrageous, you know, and I just sit there going, oh, yeah, really? I'm a nun and I have to... I learned so much more about Tibetan Buddhism after I became a nun. So, but my teachers did not look crazy. You know, I just kept thinking, they don't act like crazy people. They don't seem to just have outrageous notions and they go out and do outrageous, stupid things and that they, you know, none of that. They seem very solid, subdued, knowledgeable, you know, all these other qualities. So it was a lot, and His Holiness doesn't seem, you know, just like, I don't know, like, you know, rambling, you know, someone talking out of a dream. You know, it just doesn't feel that way. So that helps give me confidence. Because that's what I rely on is, you know, I'm still stuck in the, you know, seeing is believing category perhaps, which has its own limitations. So when you do take this, if you find a teacher, you really do want to use you really want to investigate for a long time, because the relationship is much more than coming to a class and having instructions and discussions and talking about it. It's like you're going to the next level of really relying on this person for your spiritual progress. And so you want to do that very cautiously. And they take more risk with you. You know, they'll start telling you, they'll be more directive, you know, and really kind of challenge you to look at what you're doing and suggest doing things differently and much more directed ways. Although for the Tibetans are very indirect in their sharing of information about individuals. They really take the teachings on you never know who's a bodhisattva or a Buddha unless you're a bodhisattva or a Buddha. So you shouldn't assume something about someone's mind. So they have a tendency to be very indirect with their even constructive criticism. You know, it's just sort of like, you know, it's this sort of like, well, you know, sort of, if you appear to be who you, if you are who you appear to be, kind of thing. You know, so there, it can be, I have to tell the teachers I talk to, don't be indirect with me, I won't get it. You know, you have to be very clear and specific, because I am not going to get it from a story that you're telling about someone else. You know, I need to know that you're saying, and I'm talking about you. So, and when I used to be a spiritual program coordinator, you know, because they're indirect about everything, trying to pin them down on, okay, are you agreeing to do this or not agreeing to do this? Or do we need to change this or not? Was very hard to get. I just had to say, I'm sorry, I need you to just tell me one way or the other, you know, which is considered very disrespectful.